In the last video, we covered stand-up basics for white belts. A lot of you have entered into jiu-jitsu without any experience on your feet, like some of us have in wrestling, and I can't imagine how difficult that is. So to build on top of that video, we're gonna cover low-risk, high-reward takedowns that any white belt can do that'll keep you in a safe position, even if you mess them up. Let's jump in. This first one is a personal favorite of mine. It is the quick snatch single to a leg sweep. Basically, all we're doing here is we're very quickly dropping to that ankle after we tap the face. You got to remember that the tapping of the face or the forehead will cause your opponent to close their eyes very briefly 100% of the time. Where people mess this up is that they don't fully commit to the tap. If I tap, I know you're blinking. I'm not waiting and watching to see if you blink. I tap and go. If you tap and wait to see if they blink, you've lost your opportunity. You have to tap and go. So I tap the face, immediately drop straight down and grab that lead ankle. You might find yourself asking, well, what if the guy is squared up? He's not leading with any ankle. Well, what we can do besides tapping the forehead is we can rake the face. We can pull the head down. We can push into him, making him step back towards us. As soon as that lead foot enters the game, that's when I'm tapping, dropping, and snatching. You can see here that as soon as I have access to that ankle, and no, I'm not grabbing the calf, I'm not grabbing behind the knee, I'm grabbing as low to the ground as possible. As soon as I have that ankle grabbed, I'm standing straight up with that and tucking that into my armpit. From there, I'm taking my opposite side leg and I'm stepping behind the only leg he has on the ground. I'm going to sweep his leg back as I push his chest forward. Now you can either open palm strike the chest, or you can use an elbow, you can frame on the chest to push into him while you sweep the leg back. This is your preference, but it's gonna be the same mechanism of action. Once he goes to the ground, you're probably looking for a guard pass, mount, or even a leg lock if that's something you like to do. Either way you slice it, this one's nice and safe. If you mess it up, you're not gonna find yourself in a bad position. When I'm talking about this, I'm referring to things like double legs, where if you do this a little bit sloppy, a double leg, you could end up in your opponent's guillotine. That's not where we want to end up. I don't want to do takedowns that cost a lot of energy and put me in bad positions if I do them sloppy. This quick snatch single is perfect for this. It's low energy. It's not going to put you in a bad position if you mess it up. And there's a high chance that you will complete the takedown. So if you're not working this one yet, I highly recommend you practice it because it'd be a good one to add to your arsenal. And I just want to take a quick second to give my sponsor, X Martial, a shout out. X Martial does more for the community than any other brand out there. They sponsor over 300 athletes of all levels, and they even work with kids to help them on their martial arts journey. They've given away over $10,000 in gear in 2023. So if you want to look as good as me and probably even better, get over to X Martial now and start your shopping. They're always running some kind of a deal. You can also use my discount code IRONWILL to save yourself some money. All right, well, I think that covers it. Let's jump back to the video. Next up on the list, another one of my personal favorites, the ankle pick. Now I like this one because it'll work on wrestlers, but also people who tend to get really tired and hinge at the hips. Anytime someone gets tired and their head leans forward beyond their knees, alarm should be going off your head, letting you know that the ankle pick would be a good option. Again, just like the last one, this is gonna be high reward, low risk. If you mess it up, you're not really in a bad position like you would be with a double leg. To set this up, all I really need to do is obtain my collar ties. I also like to get my outside hand on his wrist. And from here, I will pull down on the back of his head and his wrist at the same time. This loads weight up in his front foot, which makes it harder for him to kick that back when I go for it. I can also push into him, and when he pushes back into me, I'm waiting for that lead leg to step close to me, and I'm gonna drop down and grab that. Now, what's important here is that I keep his head connected to mine. You'll see that people will get sloppy with this, and their heads will come disconnected, and the person who's shooting the takedown will be a foot or two below his opponent's head. You're not gonna have as much effectiveness here, if any. So what you wanna do is stay nice and tight, ear to ear, drag their head as close to the ground as possible while you shoot for that lead leg. As you grab that lead leg, what you're gonna do is feed it off to the side while you drive into your opponents. And from there, you're gonna end up in side body, nice and safe. All right, next on the list is the high crotch. Truth be told, I've always hated this name, so if you guys have other names for this one, feel free to drop it in the comments. Basically, what we're gonna do here is start in collar ties, Instead of grabbing onto his wrist, I'm going to grab C-clamp style on the back of his tricep. A good way to remember this is you're just grabbing the elbow of the hand that's already wrapped around the back of your head. From here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push into him. As he pushes back into me, I'm going to lift my arm up, getting my head past his arm. I'm gonna shuck this past my body as I reach my inside arm towards his leg, his lead leg. From here, once I feel that his collar tie has left my body, I'm going to grab that lead leg. I'm gonna transition my inside arm to his outside leg. This is where I change directions. So when I'm pulling his collar tie past my head, I'm moving my body towards him. Once I get both my arms on his legs, I'm moving in a lateral direction to the side. You can see from this example that as I drive into him, I'm closing his legs. And as he falls to the ground, I'm positioning myself so that I land in side body. This one will probably take a little more practice than the other ones, but once you get it down, you can really start working on your speed and you can be really snappy with this one. I found that if you do it correctly and you do it quickly, your opponent's not gonna see it coming. And it's great because if you mess it up, you're not in a bad position. Again, low risk, high reward. And if you get the takedown, you end up in side body, which is where you wanna be anyways. So if you're not training the high crotch, I highly recommend you add it to your repertoire. It's a good one to have. Last but not least, on our low risk, high reward takedowns, we're covering the arm drag. Now the arm drag alone isn't a takedown unless the person drops to the ground in an attempt to escape. But what you'll see for people who are a little more well-versed on their feet, they're gonna try to fight out of this. So what you're gonna do is work the arm drag, and then from there, from the back, we're gonna work a back trip. Some of the main elements of the arm drag is you're gonna see that I will circle my front hand into a C-clamp so that my C-clamp is facing down once I'm grabbing his wrist. From there, I'm also gonna take my outside hand and grab behind his elbow. If you grab in front of his elbow, you're not gonna have much of anything to grab onto. The whole point of grabbing above the elbow or behind the elbow is when he tries to pull away, it creates a shelf for you to connect to. And having that C-clamp grip on the wrist also is great because if he tries to rip his hand down, that arm that's behind the elbow is gonna prevent that. So in using this two-hand grip, in this way, it keeps you nice and stuck to that arm. Once you've gotten your grips, this is not a place where you wanna hang out. This is a transitional phase, so we're gonna be nice and quick. You're going to use your arm that's behind the elbow to pull his arm across your body. In doing this, you're gonna take your lead leg and also step towards him. Once you put this in play, it's gonna be really easy to get behind your opponent. Once you're there, you're gonna get a 2-on-1 grip. So one hand is gonna be grabbing his opposite side wrist in front of his body, and your outside hand is going to collapse over top of his elbow. From here, you're nice and safe. And again, this is not really a place you wanna hang out. We wanna look for the takedown as soon as possible. As you can see here, I'm going to block his outside foot with my outside foot, and all I'm gonna do is sit to my butt. I'm not necessarily tipping over like a tree. I'm blocking his foot and collapsing to my hip. From there, I'm gonna roll my body out, and depending on what he does, if he falls straight to his back, I'm gonna be in side body. If he falls to his hip, or his shoulder, I can potentially take the back from here. Again, like all the takedowns we've talked about previously, if you mess this up, you're not in a bad position. It doesn't cost you a lot of energy, and it's very effective. These are the things we wanna focus on, especially when we're competing. If you're in a big bracket and you're going against multiple people, you wanna conserve your energy as best as possible so that when you get to the end and you're in that championship round, you have energy to give it your all. The big thing to remember here is that the fancy stuff, the complex stuff looks cool, it looks flashy, but if you haven't had any takedown practice, if you don't have any wrestling background, you gotta stick with the basics. The basics win championships. You gotta remember this. There's no reason to overcomplicate these things. Stick with the basics, practice the basics, get good at the basics, and you will be very effective on your feet. You white belts, blue belts, purple belts, anybody, I don't care what belt you are, if you have specific takedowns that work really, really well for you, drop them in the comments. I'm interested to see what you guys are using. I always appreciate the engagement, guys. With that, let's close it out. Sometimes backwards, always forwards. I'll see you in the next one.